Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. Thank you to the elite members of this channel. I appreciate your love and continuous dedication. As I always say, there's never enough words to thank you enough. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Scary Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. The wind howled outside my apartment, a low moan that seemed to seep through the walls, wrapping my bare bones, living space in an unshakable chill. It was 2018, the dead of winter, and I was hunched over my laptop, the blue glow casting shadows around the room. My fingers danced across the keyboard, sifting through the detritus of Craigslist, eBay, and other murky corners of the internet. Online thrifting, I called it. A harmless way to kill time, chasing the thrill of a bargain. Picture frames, candles, quirky little knickknacks to breathe life into my sterile apartment. That night, I stumbled across a listing that felt like a gift from the void. A bin overflowing with home decor, priced at a laughable $20. The seller, a woman named April, had a warmth in her messages that felt like sunlight breaking through the February gloom. She was moving, she said, shedding the weight of her possessions before they could shatter in transit. For $20, I could cherry-pick what I wanted, or take it all. A steal, a no-brainer. We agreed to meet at 6 p.m. on Thursday in the parking lot of a bustling grocery store, a place alive with the hum of shoppers and the flicker of headlights. I left work at 5. My car's heater roaring against the biting cold as I pulled into the lot. The scene was chaotic in a comforting way. Mothers hauling groceries, kids trailing behind, the air thick with the pulse of normalcy. I texted April a description of my car, a silver sedan tucked near the edge of the lot, and settled in to wait. The dashboard clock ticked past 6, then 6:05. My phone buzzed with a message that felt like a splinter under my skin. April was running late. Could I meet her closer to her workplace? She sent an address, her tone dripping with apologies, and I, fool that I was, shrugged off the inconvenience. What was a little drive for a trunk full of treasures? The GPS led me away from the neon-lit safety of the grocery store, through streets that grew narrower and quieter with each turn. I hadn't spent much time on this side of town, and as the sun vanished below the horizon, the world outside my windshield turned black and unfamiliar. The address led to a small parking lot behind a strip mall, its storefronts dark and shuttered, their signs unreadable in the gloom. The lot was a void, save for a single vehicle crouched at its far end, a red Toyota SUV, just as April had described. My headlights swept over it as I pulled in, and the emptiness of the place pressed against my chest like a warning. The contrast to the grocery store's clamor was jarring, like stepping from a crowded room into a silent crypt. I parked a few spaces away, my engine idling, my instincts whispering to turn back. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd driven all this way. I'd see it through. But the SUV's tinted windows stared back at me, opaque and unyielding, swallowing the dim streetlight. I couldn't see inside, couldn't make out a silhouette, a face, anything to anchor this moment in reality. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. I stepped out of my car, the cold biting at my exposed skin, and stood by the driver's side, waiting for April to emerge. Seconds stretched into eternity. My breath clouded in the air. The silence was deafening. broken only by the faint creak of my car's cooling engine. I was about to retreat, to slide back into the safety of my sedan, when the SUV's door creaked open. A man stepped out. He was in his 30s, maybe, his dark hair catching the faint light, his heavy tan jacket blended into the shadows. His presence was a violation, a tear in the fabric of what I expected. "April couldn't make it," he said, his voice smooth but edged with something that made my skin goosebump. "She's stuck at work. I'm here to give you the stuff." He smiled, but it was a crooked thing, like a crack in a porcelain mask. My mind reeled. Why hadn't April texted me? Why had she sent me here to this desolate place without a word? The man gestured towards the SUV's open trunk, stepping back as if inviting me into a trap. "Since it's been such a hassle, you can have all of it for free," he said, his eyes glinting in the dark. Free. The word hung in the air like bait. My heart thudded, a drumbeat urging me to flee. I took a step back, my hand fumbling for my car door. "I'm just going to call April," I stammered, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. His smile faltered, just for a moment, and that flicker of unease in his expression was enough to send ice through my veins. I slipped into my car, my fingers trembling as I pulled up April's number and hit call. The silence in the car was suffocating, broken only by the faint ring of the phone. And then, a muffled echo from outside. My eyes snapped to the man. He stood frozen, his hand slowly reaching into his pocket. The ringing stopped. My stomach plummeted. He moved toward my car, his steps quickening, his face no longer smiling but twisted with something raw and predatory. I slammed my foot on the gas, my tire screeching as I tore out of the lot, the red SUV shrinking in my rearview mirror. My breath came in ragged gasps, the world blurring as I sped through the dark streets, the glow of my dashboard the only thing tethering me to reality. There was no April. There never had been. The realization clawed at me, a sickening truth. That man, that voice behind the texts, had lured me to that empty lot with promises of candles and picture frames. What waited in that trunk wasn't decor. It was something far darker, something I'd escaped by mere seconds. I drove straight to my sister's house, my hand shaking as I recounted the night. Her face paled as she urged me to call the police. I did, but their response was a cold splash of reality. No crime had been committed. A man pretending to be a woman named April wasn't enough to warrant an investigation. They took my statement, their voices tinged with skepticism, and sent me on my merry way. But I knew what I'd felt in that lot. The weight of a gaze that wasn't human. The pull of a strap I'd narrowly avoided. I stopped browsing Craigslist after that. Stopped chasing bargains in the digital shadows. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls and the darkness presses against my windows, I wonder how many others drove to that empty lot, and how many didn't drive away. I'm 21, a college senior from Connecticut, living in a house that squats in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields that stretch into the dark like they're hiding something. It's a 20-minute drive to the nearest supermarket or fast food joint, and the silence out here is heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. I go to school in Washington, D.C., not the polished, touristy part, but the kind of neighborhood where the sight of a cop feels like a lifeline, and the shadows seem to move when you're not looking. I've seen things there that cling to your memory like damp rot. I'm no stranger to the rough edges of life. At 6'1" and 240 pounds, most of it muscle. Though I could stand to lose a few, I'm not easily rattled. I love my vices, smoking, drinking, and devouring plates of suet when I can afford it. I'm an accounting major, a practical choice for a broke student staring down the barrel of a college debt. By day, I intern at a mid-sized PR firm, crunching numbers for $20 an hour, combing through client contracts to catch every cent they try to slip past us. By night, I deliver pizzas for a greasy joint near the beach, 5 minutes from the ocean's restless churn and 20 minutes from my place. The delivery radius is absurdly wide, stretching 50 minutes north into the kind of countryside where the stars feel too bright, like they're watching you. It was 9:45 p.m. on a winter night, the kind where the cold bites into your bones and the woods beyond the road are so silent you can hear your own heartbeat. I was in the back of the pizza place, holding boxes, the repetitive task lulling me into a haze. The counter girl, barely 16 and always half distracted, shuffled over with a delivery slip. "This guy sounded weird," she said, her voice trailing off. Like he was talking through a fan or something, kind of gurgling. My DC instincts kicked in. Probably some benzo freak, I thought, already bracing for a bad encounter. I glanced at the address, a nowhere road, deep in the sticks, right on the edge of our delivery range. It was the kind of place where you'd expect to find abandoned barns or rusted trailers, not a house expecting pizza. The order itself was bizarre. A large pizza loaded with $15 worth of toppings, anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, the works. It was like someone had pointed at the menu and said, "Everything." I asked the counter girl if she got it right, and she shrugged, her eyes glassy with teenage boredom. "I think so. He was hard to understand." I sighed, figuring she'd zone out during the call. To be sure, I dialed the number on the slip. It rang 5 times. 10, 20, 30. No answer. I hung up and tried again. This time it went straight to a robotic voice. "The number you have dialed does not have a voicemail box set up. Goodbye." My manager, a gruff guy who'd seen it all, just shrugged and told the kitchen to make the pizza as ordered. "We'll sort it out," he said, like it was no big deal. I grabbed another delivery, a pie for a massive guy and a couple who offered me drinks I couldn't take, and hoped someone else would deal with the weird order by the time I got back. No such luck. The pizza sat there, its greasy weight mocking me. It was my turn again. So I grabbed it, climbed into my turbo Subaru, and punched the address into my phone. The destination was a side street next to a place locals call Open Space, a deceptively cheerful name for 500 acres of dense, pitch-black woods. It was 25 minutes away, at the very edge of our range. I cranked up some dubstep, the bass vibrating through my chest as I sped north. If you've never been in rural woods in winter, it's hard to explain the dread. There's no sound, no birds, no wind, just a suffocating quiet that makes every creak of your car feel like an intrusion. The further I drove, the more the world seemed to close in, the headlights carving a frail tunnel through the dark. I reached the street, a narrow ribbon of asphalt flanked by houses, so spread out they might as well have been on different planets, each set on maybe 5 acres, their lights faint and far apart. I was looking for 1134. I passed 1130. Then a long stretch of nothing. Empty road. No markers. Just the black wall of trees. The numbers picked up again at 11:44. No 11:34. I cursed under my breath, the pizza's heat seeping through the hot sleeve of the passenger seat. I just wanted to drop this thing off and get out of there before some pillhead tried to jump me over a $30 pizza. I tried the number again. It rang and rang, then click. Someone picked up. No voice, just a low buzzing hum, like a swarm of insects trapped in a jar. It grew louder, vibrating through my car's stereo until I yanked the phone away, afraid it'd blow my speakers. I rolled down the windows to clear the fogging glass, and that's when it hit me. A stench like rotting garbage, thick and sour, like driving through a landfill. It wasn't trash day. I gagged, threw the car into gear, and crept toward the next house, hoping to ask if they'd given the wrong address. At the end of the driveway, a single light glowed atop a stone pillar, casting a sickly yellow pool. I was maybe 100 feet away when a figure stepped out of the darkness and into the light. My stomach unclenched for a second. Thank God, it's the guy. But something was wrong. He stood too still, his silhouette unnaturally tall, draped in a black coat that swallowed him like a void. I stopped the car about 10 feet away, grabbing the pizza and the ticket, ready to make change. "Hey, sir," I called, my voice shakier than I wanted. "Sorry about all the calls. This delivery's pretty far out." No response. The air felt heavier, the silence pressing against my eardrums. I set the pizza on the roof of my car and finally looked at him. Really looked. He was a giant, at least 6'6", maybe taller. His frame gaunt under that oversized coat. No shoes, just bare feet, pale and filthy, sticking out from ripped jeans caked with dark stains. The smell hit me again, stronger now, like decay and something metallic, sharp enough to sting my nose. I forced myself to meet his gaze, and my breath caught. His eyes were wrong, sunken, black like twin pits carved into a skull. No pupils, no whites, just voids that seemed to pull the light into them. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, his head bobbing side to side in a jerky mechanical way, like a broken puppet. Not smooth, not human, more like a car door catching halfway, then lurching open with a shove. I froze, my heart hammering. The stench, the eyes, the silence. It was all wrong. I fumbled for my phone, keeping my eyes on him, and redialed the number. It rang, and then, from the woods, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a cell phone 50 yards away, maybe less, buried in the dark of open space. My blood turned to ice. He was still staring, his head twitching, and I swear I saw the corners of his mouth curl into a smile. "Hey, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "Can you come get this? Also, I think you dropped your phone or something in the woods." I tried to laugh to break the tension, but it came out like a whimper. His mouth opened, and a sound came out. A low guttural grunt, then a high-pitched one, then low again, like an animal trying to mimic speech. My knees buckled. I was ready to bolt, my hand hovering over the driver's door. I redialed the number, desperate for some explanation. The phone rang again, the faint chime echoing from the trees. Then he spoke, his voice a jagged rasp, like it was clawing its way at his throat. "Bones, not mine." The pause between the words was too long, each syllable dragging like a blade across stone. "Bones, not," came out as one slurred sound. "Mine." A shrill, unnatural pitch. My vision blurred, panic flooding my veins. I shoved the pizza to the far side of the car roof, my hands shaking. "Sir, you're freaking me out," I managed, my voice cracking. "I've got a 45 in less than $20. Just take the pizza and let me go." His head stopped bobbing. Those black pit eyes burned into me, unblinking, and his mouth opened again. What?" The words were wrong, like they didn't belong to him. Then, in a single spasmodic lurch, he moved toward the car. Not a step, but a jerk, like something yanked him forward. "The bone was his." I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. He lurched again, closer now, his voice shifting higher, panic, not his own. "Bones, not his anymore." I was sobbing now, incoherent, my mind screaming to run. Then, in a voice I'd never heard, clear, cold, and impossibly calm, he said, "Go away. Stop following me. I will call the police." Another jerk, and he was at the car. His hand, pale and claw-like, reached for the pizza. He set something on the roof. Quarters, slick with a dark, viscous liquid that spread like syrup, reeking of copper and rot. I didn't think. I dove into the car, the door half open, and peeled out, leaving the hot sleeve, the pizza, everything. I hit 80 miles per hour, the road a blur, until I swerved into a U-turn, too terrified to keep going into the unknown. As I sped back past the house, he was gone. The light at the end of the driveway flickered, then went out. I hit a stop sign at the main road, my hands trembling on the wheel. I glanced right, clear, then left. His face was there, 12 inches from mine, pressed against the window. Those black eyes, that sickening smile, the stench flooding through the open window. I screamed, my heart seizing, and floored it, the tires screeching as I tore down the road. Back at the pizza place, I stumbled inside, shaking, lighting a cigarette despite my no-smoking rule. The counter girl looked up, confused. "Hey, that guy from the open space house called back, said you forgot some food, but he only ordered the pizza, right? He wants you to come back." I broke down, tears streaming. My phone buzzed, 14 missed calls from that number. I checked the voicemails. 13 were silent, just static and distant rustling. The last one was different. Ragged breathing, low grunts, and something else. A faint, wet sound, like meat being torn. I sat there sobbing in front of the counter girl, not caring how pathetic I looked. Then I remembered the quarters. I grabbed a flashlight and went to my car. The roof was smeared with that thick coppery fluid, glistening under the beam. In the panel gap by their rear window, the quarters were stuck, embedded in the goop. And there, clinging to one, was a soft, pale chunk of something. Tissue, maybe, or worse. I vomited, the bile burning my throat. Then I saw it. A single line of that fluid trailing from the roof to the driver's side door. He tried to open it. At the stop sign, when his face was right there. I staggered back inside, crying harder. The counter girl tried the number again, over and over, straight to voicemail. The next morning, I gave the number to my uncle, a police captain a few towns over. He said it was a burner phone, paid in cash, untraceable, and now turned off. I haven't slept right since. The lights stay on at night, but the darkness feels alive, watching. Sometimes when it's quiet, I hear that grunt, low, then high, then low again, coming from somewhere just beyond the walls. I was in my late 20s when I moved into that house in 2019, a crumbling relic on the frayed edge of a quiet town. It was a squat, one-story rental, cheap enough to overlook its flaws, creaky floorboards, walls so thin I could hear the wind slither through them, and a small weed-choked backyard that seemed to swallow light. The house came with a basement, a feature I didn't care for but accepted, storing old furniture, tools, and boxes of forgotten things down there. For the first few months, it was just a place to live. The pipes groaned when I showered, and a kitchen cabinet would swing open like it had a mind of its own. But those were quirks I could dismiss. Old houses breathe, don't they? They settle, they sigh. The basement, though, that was different. The door, heavy and warped, sat in the hallway by the bathroom, its hinges protesting with every tug. The light switch was halfway down the stairs, forcing you to descend into a void before you could banish the darkness. The first time I went down, the air clung to my skin, thick with the scent of damp wood and something older, sharper, like rust or decay. The single bulb cast weak, flickering light, leaving the corners shrouded. I didn't linger. I stacked my boxes, shut the door, and tried to forget the way the shadows seemed to shift just beyond the light's reach. By late October, the house began to feel wrong. I worked nights as a security guard, coming home at around 3 a.m. when the world was still and heavy. One night, as I shuffled toward the bathroom, exhaustion pulling at my bones, I heard it. 3 soft knocks, deliberate, like fingertips brushing the other side of the basement door. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The hallway was dim, the silence oppressive. I told myself it was nothing. The pipes, the house settling, the trick of my tired mind. But then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, measured, as if something was testing whether I'd respond. I stood there, staring at the door, its chipped paint glowing faintly in the moonlight, seeping through a nearby window. My pulse thrummed in my ears. "It's just the house," I whispered, but the words felt hollow, like a lie told to a child. I didn't open the door. I backed away, retreated to my bedroom, and locked it, leaving the TV on to drown out the silence. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay there, straining to hear the low hum of infomercials, waiting for those knocks to return. They didn't. Morning came, gray and cold. I forced myself to check the basement. The door resisted, as always, before giving way with a groan. I descended, fumbling for the light switch in the dark. The bulb flickered to life, revealing nothing but my untouched boxes. The concrete floor coated in a thin layer of dust. No footprints, no broken windows, no signs of anything. I laughed it off, blaming the pipes or maybe a rat. But deep down, I knew those knocks weren't mechanical. They had intent. A few nights later, it happened again. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, the mirror reflecting my tired eyes, when a single sharp knock rattled the basement door. It wasn't tentative this time. It was forceful, like a fist demanding attention. I dropped my toothbrush, the clatter loud in the quiet. I opened the bathroom door, the hallway stretching before me. The basement door closed, but somehow looming. I approached, my bare feet cold against the floorboards, and pressed my ear to the wood. Silence at first, then faint but unmistakable. A slow, rhythmic breathing, like someone or something standing inches away, waiting. Goosebumps enveloped my body, a wave of cold dread washing over me. I stumbled back, locked myself in my room, and called my landlord. He came the next morning, a gruff man with no patience for ghost stories. We descended into the basement together, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. He checked the windows, the walls, the foundation. Nothing was out of place. No signs of a break-in, no animal tracks. "Old houses make noises," he said, shrugging. I didn't argue. How could I explain the breathing, the weight of something watching me? I felt foolish, but the unease lingered, coiling tighter with each passing night. For a week, the house was quiet. I convinced myself it was my imagination, that the long night shifts were fraying my nerves. But then, at around 2 a.m., as I sat on the couch watching TV, a new sound pierced the silence. Not a knock, but a slow, grinding creak. The basement door's hinges moving, as if it were opening itself. I muted the TV, my heart hammering. The hallway was dark, but there it was. The door, wide open, a black maul leading down. I hadn't touched it in days. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I approached, its beam slicing through the dark. The basement was a void, the bulb dead. I flicked the switch. Nothing. Then, from below, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, climbing the stairs. Not the scurry of an animal, but the heavy tread of something large, something that knew I was there. I backed away, my breath shallow, and slammed the door shut, gripping the handle. For a moment, I felt resistance, something pressing back, testing the door's strength. Then it stopped. My hands shook as I dialed the police, my voice barely steady as I told them someone was in my basement. They arrived quickly, 2 officers with flashlights and skeptical expressions. They searched the house, the basement, every corner. Nothing. No signs of entry, no disturbances. One of them chuckled, asking if I'd been watching horror movies. I wanted to scream that I knew what I heard, but I stayed silent. After they left, I stood in the front yard, staring at the house. It felt alive, watchful, its windows like eyes. The next morning, I bought a padlock and secured the basement door. I didn't care if it violated the lease. I needed that barrier, that illusion of control. For a month, the house was silent. No knocks, no creaks. I almost believed it was over. But then one night, I came home from work, my keys jingling in the quiet. The hallway light flickered as I passed the basement door and stopped. The padlock lay on the floor, its metal twisted, broken. The door was ajar, a thin sliver of darkness spilling out. I hadn't touched it in weeks. My blood ran cold. Every incident, the knocks, the breathing, the footsteps, had happened at night when I was alone. The realization hit me like a blade. Whatever was in that basement knew my routine. It was waiting for me. It didn't go down. I couldn't. I grabbed a bag, stuffed it with clothes, and fled to a friend's house. I stayed there for days, unable to shake the image of that broken padlock. The door silent, invitation. When I returned, I nailed the door shut, hammering until my hands ached, then wedged a chair against it for good measure. The landlord could sue me for all I care. I just needed that door sealed. But the house wasn't done with me. A few nights later, as I lay in bed, the air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing inside the walls. Then I heard it, a sound I'll never forget. Not a knock, not footsteps, but a voice. Low, guttural, like a rumble from deep within the earth. It came from beneath the floorboards, directly under my bed, vibrating through the mattress. It wasn't words, just a presence, a sound that felt alive, hungry. I bolted upright, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I didn't wait. I called the police again. They searched, found nothing, their flashlights illuminating the same empty basement. They left, their radios crackling in the night. That was it. I packed what I could carry, leaving everything in the basement behind. I broke the lease, moved into an apartment in another town, and never looked back. In the quiet of the night sometimes, I lie awake and think about that house. I think about the knocks, the breathing, the footsteps climbing closer. And I wonder, what would have happened if I'd waited just a moment longer? What would have emerged from the darkness, its eyes meeting mine as it stepped into the light? I remember the exact moment I signed the lease for that townhouse in southern Illinois back in the fall of 2021. The air was crisp with the promise of decay, leaves turning blood red and brittle underfoot. The kind of season where everything starts to wither and hide. I was 27, technically an adult with a steady job managing inventory at a distribution center. But inside, I felt like a child playing house. I just clawed my way out of a brutal breakup, the kind that leaves you hollowed out, questioning every shadow in your own mind. Living alone for the first time seemed like a twisted form of therapy. Silence to drown in, solitude to force me to face the wreckage. But from the start, that place whispered warnings I should have heeded. The townhouse sat in a forgotten cul-de-sac off a desolate rural highway, part of a monotonous row of identical units. Beige vinyl siding that blended into the graying sky. Trimmed hedges like silent sentinels, wind chimes tinkling like distant laughter, mocking the quiet. Mailboxes bore stenciled family names, faded and peeling, as if the lives behind them were slowly erasing themselves. The neighbors were ghosts, elderly folks shuffling behind the drawn curtains, young families with children who played in whispers, never too loud, never too alive. I relished the anonymity at first. No one knocked, no one pried. But anonymity cuts both ways. It invites the unseen to watch unchecked. It didn't take long for him to emerge from the haze. 3 doors down, in a unit that mirrored mine like a dark reflection, lived a man. Tall and heavy-set, mid-40s, I'd guess, with a scruffy beard that crawled across his face like overgrown weeds. His eyes, God, his eyes were voids, sucking in the light without giving anything back. I'd spot him at night after my late shifts ended at around 9 or 10 p.m., when I'd pull into the driveway under the sickly glow of street lamps. There he'd be, standing on his porch or at the edge of his driveway, motionless as a gravestone, not pacing aimlessly like a restless soul, not smoking to pass the time. No, he just stared into the empty street, or sometimes directly at me as my headlights swept over him. No wave, no nod, no flicker of humanity. Just that unblinking gaze, pinning me in place like a specimen under glass. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was just a night owl, insomniac maybe, haunted by his own demons. Friends laughed it off when I mentioned it over the phone. My mom suggested he might be lonely, but loneliness doesn't explain the stillness. He didn't fidget, didn't scroll on a phone, didn't even shift his weight. He was a statue carved from shadow, waiting, participating in nothing yet absorbing everything. I started parking with my lights off, hurrying inside without glancing his way, but I could feel his eyes boring into my back, tracing my every step. The gnawing in my gut grew, a slow rot spreading through my nerves. Was he watching everyone or just me? And why did it feel like he knew things? Secrets I'd buried deep after the breakup, vulnerabilities I'd never voiced. By mid-September, the night turned colder, the wind howling like a predator circling its prey. That's when the noises began, insidious at first, worming into my sleep like fingers prying at the edge of my mind. I'd stumble home at around 10:30 p.m., bone-tired from the warehouse fluorescence, scarf down whatever scraps I had in the fridge, and collapse into bed by midnight. My bedroom was on the first floor, at the back, with a sliding glass door veiled by vertical blinds leading to a fenced-in yard, a pathetic patch of decorative gravel that crunched underfoot like brittle bones. That first night, at precisely 2:37 a.m., I jolted awake to a sound that slithered through the darkness, metal scraping against wood, deliberate and slow, like nails dragging across a coffin lid. I froze, convincing myself it was a dream, but then it came again, a long groaning creak, as if an ancient gate was easing open, inviting something in. My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic prisoner begging for escape. Silence followed, thick and oppressive. Then, footsteps. Soft, measured crunches on the gravel. Not the scamper of an animal, but the deliberate tread of something human, something patient. I could picture it, toes testing the ground, weight shifting with calculated stealth. The yard was enclosed, fenced high, but what good is a fence against something that wants in? Trembling, I snatched my phone from the nightstand, my only lifeline in that suffocating void. No weapon to speak of, just a dull kitchen knife. I'd stashed there in a fit of paranoia, its edge mocking my helplessness. I crept to the window, crouching low, parting the blinds with a finger. The motion light stayed dark, as if whatever lurked out there knew its secrets, evading the beam. Shadows dance in the periphery, but nothing solid. My breath came in shallow gasps as I dialed 911, whispering my address to the dispatcher, who sounded distant, almost indifferent, like she'd heard this nightmare 1,000 times before. 10 agonizing minutes ticked by, me huddled in the dark, every creak of the house amplifying my terror. Finally, red and blue lights pierced the front windows, casting eerie pulses across the walls. I met the 2 officers at the door, my voice cracking as I recounted the sounds the exact time. One patrolled the yard, while the other quizzed me, his tone laced with skepticism. The backyard officer returned. Gate closed, no tampering, no footprints, marring the gravel. "Probably a raccoon," he said, his eyes saying more. "You're hysterical, wasting our night." They followed a report, promised to drive by more often, and vanished into the black, leaving me alone with the echoes. Sleep evaded me that night, the house feeling alive, walls breathing in rhythm with my fear. Morning light revealed the truth I'd missed. A flat stone, paperback-sized, wedged under the gate's bottom edge. Not random debris, but placed with intent, propping it ajar against the heavy spring. Subtle, sinister, a key left for a return visit. Silent and unseen. My skin crawled as I hurled it away, watching it skitter across the gravel like a fleeing insect. I called the police again, voice edged with desperation, describing the stone. They noted it, but dismissed. No crime, no action. No knocking on doors, no canvassing the neighbors. "Unless something happens," they said, as if my dread wasn't enough. The unease festered, a poison seeping deeper. 2 nights later, it clawed closer. At 2:14 a.m., the door handle rattled. Gentle at first. Exploratory, like a lover testing boundaries. Then harder, insistent, a demand for entry. I bolted upright, mouth caught and dry, the air thick with malice. Through the blinds sliver, a shadow loomed, human-shaped, unmoving. It didn't flee. It lingered, as if savoring my terror. Phone in hand, I called again, crouching in the hallway's gloom, knife clutched like a talisman. The motion light flared, illuminating the silhouette. Tall, broad, faceless in the hood. The same officers arrived, found footprints this time, deep impressions leading straight to the door, then vanishing into nothing. But no entry, no damage. "Keep locked up," they advised, their promises hollow as they drove away. Desperation drove me to install cameras the next day. Wi-Fi sentinels above the doors, eyes where mine failed. That night, I didn't sleep. I perched in the living room's inky blackness, phone glowing like a feeble ward. 2:14 passed in tense quiet. Then, at 2:23, the back feed flickered to life. He stepped into view, gliding through the gate with unnatural precision, evading sensors until the end. Tall, hooded in black, gloved hands swinging loose. He approached the door, tilted his head up to the camera, and smiled. A slow, predatory stretch of lips, teeth glinting like promises of pain. He held the gaze, then retreated, melting into the night. Police viewed the footage, admitted unease, but bound by rules. No break-in, no threat overt enough. I begged for neighbor checks, especially him 3 doors down, but they refused. Hands tied, they said. That night, I fled to a hotel, the townhouse, a tomb I couldn't bear. Returning, daylight exposed the violation. 4 muddy handprints smeared on the glass. Too high, too low, as if he'd crouched, pressing close, peering in with that vacant stare, breathing fog onto the pane. I broke the lease, forfeited everything, packing under a cloud of dread. The final horror waited in the mailbox. A note on crumpled paper, cramped script like spider legs. The cops leave, but I don't. It chilled me to the core. A confession of eternal vigilance. The officer that time paled, promised a wellness check, but I was done, gone, never to return. A month later, a Facebook message pierced the fragile peace I'd rebuilt. From Kayla, the new tenant. Hi, sorry to bother. I think you lived here before. Ever have a guy in a black hoodie lurking in the backyard? Footsteps at night, knocking on the glass at around 2 a.m., just standing there? I stared at the words, a cold wave crashing over me. He was still there, waiting, his shadow stretching across lives like an unending curse. I didn't reply. Some doors, once open, can never be shut. I never thought my job would drag me into the kind of nightmare that lingers in the back of your mind, whispering to you in the dead of night. I work for a property preservation company. Nothing fancy, just the grim task of dealing with foreclosed homes. We secure them against the elements and intruders, clean out the remnants of lives that have crumbled away, winterize pipes that will never carry water again, and sometimes board up windows shattered by vandals or worse. It's solitary work, mostly. You spend hours alone in these hollow shells, surrounded by the echoes of strangers' misfortunes. The air is always thick with dust and regret, and the silence presses in like an unwelcome guest. Most days it's just melancholic drudgery, a paycheck earned in the quiet ruins of other people's dreams. But every so often you step into a place that doesn't feel empty at all. It feels occupied, watching, and that's when the real chill sets in. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you question if you're truly alone. This particular horror unfolded back in 2020, when I was dispatched to a forsaken property in the rural wastelands of upstate New York. The town, if you could call it that, was one of those forgotten specks on the map, gasping its last breaths. A single rusting gas station squatted at the edge of cracked roads overgrown with weeds that clawed at the asphalt like skeletal fingers. Half the businesses were shuttered, their windows staring blankly like empty eye sockets, and the few remaining souls shuffled about like ghosts in a graveyard. The house itself was a squat, one-story relic tucked off a twisting dirt road, hemmed in by dense woods on 3 sides, trees that loomed like silent sentinels, their branches intertwining overhead to blot out the sky. No neighbors for miles, just the endless rustle of leaves and the oppressive hush that swallowed every sound. It was the kind of isolation that made you feel exposed, vulnerable, as if the world had turned its back on you. The file on my dashboard painted a sparse picture. The elderly owner, a widow named Eleanor Voss, had died alone in her bed over a year prior. No heirs had emerged from the shadows to claim the estate, leaving it to rot under the bank's indifferent gaze. Utilities severed. No water, no power. Just a decaying husk waiting for us to pick its bones clean. The task was straightforward. Catalog any lingering belongings, haul them out, and fortify the place against the coming winter's bite. I arrived that Monday morning around 9 a.m., my small box truck rumbling over the uneven path, kicking up dust that hung in the air like a shroud. From the outside, the house seemed deceptively intact. Windows sealed shut like closed eyelids, door locked tight, roof sagging but unbroken. But the weeds had claimed the porch, vines snaking up the railings like veins, pulsing with some hidden life. I had to shoulder the front door open. It groaned in protest, swollen from neglect, releasing a puff of stale air that carried the faint acrid tang of abandonment. Inside, the dim light filtered through grimy lace curtains, casting elongated shadows that danced unnaturally across the faded wallpaper. The living room was a time capsule of faded grandeur. Heavy oak furniture draped in dust, doilies yellowed like old skin, porcelain figurines staring out with glassy, unblinking eyes. It reminded me of my grandmother's house, but twisted somehow. Less warm memory, more like a parody of comfort, where every object seemed to hold a secret malice. The air was thick, almost viscous, clinging to my skin and filling my lungs with the musty scent of mildew and something sharper, metallic, like the aftertaste of blood. I shook off the unease and got to work, snapping photos to document the scene. That's when my work phone buzzed in my pocket, a sharp, insistent vibration that jolted through me like an electric shock. I froze. I checked my signal the moment I pulled up. 0 bars, nothing but dead air in this godforsaken hollow. Yet, here it was, ringing. The caller ID read, "Unknown caller." No number, just those stark words glowing on the screen. I answered, pressing it to my ear, and was met with a low crackling static, like distant thunder rolling through a storm that's not quite here yet. "Hello," I said, my voice echoing too loudly in the empty room. Nothing. I repeated it, louder, but the line remained devoid of hissing emptiness. I hung up, muttering about glitches, but a prickle of dread had already started at the base of my spine, spreading like ice water through my veins. Pushing it aside, I moved deeper into the house. The hallway stretched out like a throat, narrow and dim, the metallic scent growing stronger, mingling with the dust to create a nauseating haze. 3 bedrooms branched off it, each one a chamber of quiet horrors. The first was stripped bare, save for a sagging mattress on the floor, its stains blooming like dark flowers in the faint light. The second had been a sewing room, spools of thread scattered like spilled entrails across the desk, a machine hunched there like a predatory insect, its needle glinting ominously. On the wall, a corkboard caught my eye, pinned with dozens of newspaper clippings, all obituaries. Yellowed edges curling like claws, names of the deceased staring back. Locals, strangers, their faces blurred in grainy print. Deaths cataloged with meticulous care. Accidents, illnesses, suicides, each one clipped with precision, as if someone had been collecting souls. I felt a chill worm its way down my skin, imagining the old woman sitting here in the dead of night, scissors snicking through paper, her eyes gleaming with some unholy fascination. The master bedroom was worse. A rotary phone set on the nightstand. Off-white plastic faded to a sickly jaundice, its coiled cord dangling like a noose. I hadn't seen one in decades. It belonged to an era long buried, a relic that should have been silent forever, its line severed like a lifeline cut short. I stared at it, transfixed, a vague unease twisting in my gut, before forcing myself to the bathroom. That's when my phone rang again. Unknown caller. My hand trembled as I answered, stepping back into the hallway. Static again. But this time, after an agonizing 5 seconds, a whisper slithered through the noise. Soft, insidious, like breath against the nape of my neck. Don't answer the phone in the bedroom. The words hung in the air. Then the line went dead, leaving only the pounding of my chest. I stood frozen, the house's silence roaring in my ears. Windows were sealed, no sign of entry, no one outside in the encroaching woods. Who could have known? My mind raced to pranks, maybe a coworker, but no one knew my schedule. And the signal, I checked. One flickering bar, then gone, like a phantom teasing me from the ether. Panic clawed at me, but I pressed on, boxing up the living room's detritus, books with pages that whispered as I turned them, figurines whose eyes seemed to follow my movements, glassware coated in a film that felt unnaturally sticky. All the while I felt it, eyes on me, invisible and relentless, boring into my back from the hallway's shadows. I glanced over my shoulder repeatedly, expecting a figure to materialize, pale, watchful, grinning in the gloom. Then came the third ring. Not my phone. This one was shrill, mechanic, echoing through the house like a scream from the past. The rotary phone in the bedroom. It shouldn't have been possible. The line's been dead for over a year. No power, no connection. Yet it rang. Insistent, vibrating the nightstand with each peal. My blood turned to ice as I crept down the hallway, the sound growing louder, more demanding, like it was summoning me. I reached the doorway, heart slamming against my ribs. The receiver trembled with each ring, the cord coiling relentlessly. I could almost feel a presence on the other end, waiting, breathing. The rings dragged on. 5, 6, 7, before abruptly ceasing, plunging the house back into that suffocating quiet. I backed away, my skin crawling as if invisible fingers brushed against it. I should have fled then, but duty or some darker compulsion drove me to the basement. The door lurked in the kitchen, its wood warped and splintered. I opened it slowly, the hinges wailing like a tormented soul. Stairs descended into pitch blackness, creaking under my weight as I flicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the murk, revealing shelves lined with rusted paint cans and broken furniture, their shapes twisted into grotesque forms in the shadows. The air down there was foul, mold-laced with rust, like the breath of something decaying. In the far corner, a small table hunched in the darkness. On it sat a cordless phone, a newer model, gray and dust-shrouded, like a sentinel forgotten in the abyss. Beside it, a stack of yellow notebooks, their pages warped with age. I picked one up, my hands slick with sweat. Flipping through it, I found entries scrawling in a spidery hand. Names, dates, terse notations. Lena H., July 3rd, 2019. Rang once, didn't answer. Carl M., September 12th, 2019. Picked up, warned him. Dozens more, a litany of the damned. Some marked, answered, too late. Others, ignored, safe for now. My heart plummeted, a void opening in my chest as I scanned the dim corners, certain now that eyes gleamed from the darkness. Watching, waiting. Was she down here? Eleanor or something wearing her skin? I dropped the notebook, bolting up the stairs, glancing back into the void that seemed to pursue me, hungry and endless. I didn't finish. I hurled myself into the truck, engine roaring as I fled down the dirt road. The house shrinking in the rear view like a malevolent entity glaring after me. Back at the office, I filed a vague report. Unsafe, possible squatters, omitting the whispers, the rings, the notebooks that hinted at some ritualistic game of life and death. 2 days later, a text from Mark, another crew guy. The phone in the bedroom with no service rang while I was there. What the hell? I hadn't warned him and hadn't wanted to sound unhinged. I called immediately. His voice was shaky, admitting he hadn't answered. Too terrified by the unnatural pale echo in the silence. The next day, he vanished. Quit without a word, severing ties like cutting a cursed thread. I stalked his Facebook later. He was alive, posting banal updates, but his eyes in the photos looked haunted, shadowed by whatever abomination he'd glimpsed that I hadn't. The boss called the police after that, citing intruders. They found nothing. No one. No signs of life. Just the empty house, waiting in the woods. But I know better. It wasn't a prank or a trap. It was something older, sinister, woven into the very walls. A presence that dials from beyond, warning or luring those foolish enough to listen. Even now, years later, when my phone rings from an unknown number, I hesitate, heart racing, wondering if it's her voice I'll hear next, whispering my name from the grave. And that, dear listeners, brings these true scary stories to an end. I'd like to take this moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you all so much for your continuous support. As I always say, without you, I don't have a voice, and I would be sitting here reading to the void. I appreciate everything you do to help continue Back to Ashes presence here on YouTube. If you are new to the channel and you have enjoyed what you've heard, please don't forget to hit that like and leave a comment. If you would like to join the Back to Ashes family, please hit that subscribe button and make sure your notification bell is set to all. That way you don't miss every time I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you are awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.